Good morning, and welcome to Pickerington Public Library's Art at Home. I'm Miss Brienne. I work at the Pickerington Public Library, Maine, and I am in the Youth Services Department. And I'm bringing you another presentation of artworks that you can make at your house. Again, you don't have to make the art as we are talking about it here. I'm just going to kind of give you the background, the instructions, and you can take what you learn and then go make what you can make. So we did printmaking last week. Today we're going to work on lines and landscapes. So we're going to talk about what line is, what landscape is. Line and landscape. All right, my screen's covering some of the words here. We're going to talk about the elements of art very quickly. The elements of art are defined as the basic components or building blocks of an artwork. So basically any artwork that has ever been made has at least one, if not several, of these things in it. So these are color, value, line, texture, shape, form, and space. We're going to concentrate more on line today for our project. I do have my special helper here today. My daughter Violet is here again. I'd like to say hello.
Hi.
Hi. What would you like to tell our friends at home what you have learned about line? What were some things you learned about line?
There's lines that are straight.
Straight lines. Swirly lines.
Loop-de-loops.
Loop-de-loops.
Even there's zigzags.
Zigzags. Dotted lines. Dashes. Oh my gosh, you have a whole list of them, don't you?
Like
so
crisscross ones.
Crisscross. So we discovered a lot of different kinds of lines doing this project, didn't we? Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I'll have you back here in a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit more about line. So line is simply a continuous mark made on a surface. For our purposes, it's going to be a pen or pencil mark on a piece of paper. So lines can be lots of different things, which Violet had told us about, and we'll talk about those in just a few minutes. You're welcome to look at this if you are more in depth interested in art. These are some other art terms that we could talk about. Principles of art are basically the way that the elements can be used, and these can be talked about with any of the artworks that we're about to see here in a moment. So I wanted to show you some examples of art throughout the world that utilizes line. So here is a terracotta Greek vase from thousands of years ago. And you'll notice there are geometric lines at the top of the vase. There are thick bands, there are thin bands, there are designs in bands across the artwork. So this is a really good example that shows how line can be used in an artwork. You might recognize this from last week. This is the Great Wave off Kanagawa. And again, if the artist didn't outline, you know, those swirly lines going across the waves, maybe we wouldn't recognize that shape as much. So he uses the line to kind of define the shape of the waves and kind of give it that wave feeling. Those are wavy lines. We all know how to make those wavy lines. We've all done that before. Here's another pretty famous fella, Vincent van Gogh. He is well known for the way he used his brush strokes with his paint. So you can see it almost looks like it's made up of a bunch of little lines, and that's really just the way that he applied his paint in these long, thick, heavy brush strokes. So even though this is a painting, it definitely has a lot of line used in it. He uses it to kind of create the shapes. And you can almost see, like in the background, it kind of makes this kind of like aura, or like when you think of like how the sun rays go around, kind of looks like that as well. Cover your eyes. This was a little hard to look at. This artwork is from Bridget Riley. It's called Fall. It's from the 1960s, and this was during a period when artists were doing something called op art or optical art. It kind of created optical illusions. So this is simply black and white paint and swirly patterns. But when our eyes see a painting like this, it looks like it's moving. Our eyes want to make it move. Our eyes are trying to make sense of all these wavy lines. So it kind of gives the impression that it's moving or shaking. All right, so that was a little bit about line. We're just going to talk quickly about what landscape is, because these are the types of artworks we're going to make today. So a landscape is basically an artwork that shows the land, a countryside, or maybe some mountains and hills in the background. That's the most important part of the landscape. A landscape could have some people in it, but usually with the landscape, the most important part, the biggest focus is the land, the shape of the land, or what's happening with the grasses or the flowers or whatever else is in the artwork. There are also seascapes. Obviously, that's going to be an artwork where you concentrate on a view of the sea, and cityscapes, which would be a view of a city skyline. So boy, Vincent van Gogh, he pops up a lot when we talk about art, doesn't he? So this is his famous The Starry Night, and this is a landscape painting. So you can see we've got the swirly sky, we've got the waves and hills in the background, we've got some trees, we've got a village, we've got some houses, we've got a church, we've got a big cypress tree in the front here. So this is actually a landscape painting. And this is a good example of both lines, because the way he utilizes his brush strokes of paint, but also this is a landscape. Here's another landscape. This is more of a traditional type of landscape. And again, you might see a city far towards I'll call it the back of the painting, towards the middle. You can see it very small, but here he's more concentrating on the trees, the waving water there. And you can see layers of hills and grasses. So this is another landscape. And here's another really cool landscape as well. We've got different levels. We've got, you know, in the front of the picture, we'll call it the front. That's also called the foreground. We have, you know, the fence and the cows, and a little further back, we've got the water, and a little further back, we've got a bridge that goes up to another hill. On top of that hill is a house. So this is another good example of landscape where there are some people, there are some animals, but the focus of it is more the land. Here's the seascape. I did talk about those briefly. So again, a seascape is going to be an artwork that focuses on what the water looks like. I always thought this one was very cool because of the way the water looks like it's shimmering or shining. And that's just with the way that he applied his paint to the canvas. Oh, look who's back again, the Great Wave of Kanagawa. Again, seascape. This is an example of a seascape. We can see the mountain in the background, Mount Fuji in the background, but the main focus of this artwork is the boats on the water. If you didn't see that, in between the waves, there's little boats. And here's the cityscape from the 1900s by a French painter. And this one just, again, shows, you know, a long road, shows the carriages being driven down the road. You can see the shapes of the buildings. You know, the people are in the picture, but they're not the main focus of the picture. It's more the lay of how the city looks. All right, so our art supplies were pretty simple for this one. So let's talk about what we're going to do. And I'll list these again at the end, but basically drawing materials. We've got our bag of crayons, we've got some markers, we've got colored pencils. We use some Sharpies to make some defining black lines. We've got paper, pencils, and I've got a ruler down here. Sometimes you need a ruler just to make some straight lines, so I had that handy as well. So step one, this is what Violet and I did first. We came up with as many different lines as we could. Now I labeled mine. You can see here I labeled straight line, wavy line, zigzag line, and on and on and on. So see if you could do that when you make your artwork, and I'll list that again at the end as well. But I just started making a bunch of different lines. If you start to repeat lines, you start to make a pattern. So sometimes I might say line or pattern. So just make a line of repeated shapes or lines or squiggles or whatever it may be, and see what you can come up with. Like I said, I named mine. Violet didn't name her, she just gave it a shot, and she made some very interesting lines. She actually enjoyed this part of the project. So she made maybe 4 of these things. Yeah, she made 4 different examples. So this was us just trying to figure out what kinds of lines what could we come up with, right? We just want to see what we could come up with. Yeah. And here's Violet. Again, I made a grid for her. So I just, again, sketched this out on paper real quick with black marker and a straight edge. And I asked Violet to fill up each of the squares with a different repeated line pattern. What did you think of this part? Was this hard or was this easy or fun or?
It was all of those things.
It was all of those things?
Yeah.
It was easy?
Yeah.
And fun?
Kind of.
Kind of hard to think of so many different kinds of lines.
Yeah.
Do you think it helped us later for our other artworks though, to kind of practice first? Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. So here's what Violet ended up with. These are her different lines that she made. So we kind of use this as a reference sheet, something we go back to when we didn't know what kinds of lines we wanted to do. We use some of these lines. Here's the one that I made. I did a couple more patterns just to try it out, just to see what I could come up with. It's funny, you start going and it's kind of hard to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mystery.
Kind of a mystery. All right. So our next step was we just kind of sketched out basically what kind of artwork we wanted to make. Mine is on the left. I was going to do a landscape. Violet really liked the wave painting, so she wanted to do a seascape. So I just sketched in on mine the basic shape of there's going to be water at the front, and then I did different layers of hills in the background, a mountain, and then a sun with some sun rays shooting out. Violet put in a couple of different layers of wave. She put a wave that's crashing down, and then she also did a sunshine in the background. So we just kind of lightly sketched that with pencil. And here are our finished products. I just used marker for this one. So I kind of try to concentrate on certain colors. So I did blue for the water. I did different kinds of green for the hills. I did gray for the mountain. I did some oranges and yellows and reds for the sun. Here's Violet's. So she used different, not only did she do the wavy lines, but she changed the color of blue that she used as she went along. So it kind of gave it a little more interest. So she used the wavy patterns in the water. She used these kind of, what do you call those, loop-de-loos up there for the sky. And then she did a big swirl for the sun. So she's pretty happy with how that ended up. And she even added a couple little fish just to make it fun.
I accidentally colored the sky, the sun, and the shine of the sun.
Yeah.
So I just mixed some nice swirls, loop-de-loops, and lines.
So you're saying that it's easy to fix your mistakes?
Yeah, you just put a special like line inside it.
Okay, you just fix your mistake. That's the best we can do, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's cool about art too, right? What did we say that we like about art? What's so fun about art? What do you get to do?
That you can make your own project.
Your own project, you make your own choices.
And make your own kind of swirls.
Yeah, it's all, you're in control, right? It's
Mhm.
yours is different than mine. Mine is different from somebody else.
Yeah.
That's what's fun about it, yeah. All right, well, let's finish up. We really liked making these wave drawings, so we made 2 more. Here's the next one that I made. And I just put this little tiny red boat on top just for some interest. But this is supposed to be like you're looking at the water and all the different layers of water. So I try to keep water color in mind. So I use different blues and greens. I tried to make things that I thought looked like water. So at the bottom, you kind of see it looks like scales or mermaid scales. I've got wavy lines. The green part is seaweed. In the middle there, I thought that kind of looked like octopus tentacles, the little suction cups. Yeah. And I thought that the top waves kind of had a C shape. So I repeated that in smaller C shapes down below. And this one I just colored in with colored pencil. And let's take a look at Violet's. She also did a red boat as well. And she kind of stuck with the green and blue theme as well. We left some white in there for some interest. And she actually put a beach down at the bottom of hers. And you might note that little starfish down there, huh? You got some seaweed coming up. And a fish, yep. Yeah. All right, so those are our projects. And this is what you could try at home. So the supplies you would need is basically just drawing supplies. So paper, probably white paper. Anything you have. White works best if you're going to be coloring on it, but it might be cool if you were just going to use like black marker. Like what if you used a red piece of paper? That might be cool, right? That might be cool. Yep.
Yeah, we just use white.
We just use white. Yep. Drawing utensils, whatever you have. We tried marker and we tried crayon and colored pencils. So use what you have. Use them all together if you want. Whatever you have.
If you mix them up, they could turn out to a beautiful
It could be beautiful, you're right. All right, so these are the steps I suggested you might want to try. Step 1 is to draw the different kind of lines that you can come up with. Step 2 is to make a grid and fill it up with different repeated patterns. That's where we can have the boxes of the different line shapes. And then lastly, make a landscape or a seascape or a cityscape to show what you learned with your various lines. Or you could do any kind of picture you want and just fill in the different areas of your picture with line. I thought of this kind of cool bonus activity. If you got a lot of people in your family, or maybe you like to do art together, what if you played pass the art? What if some of you were to, work on it together? So you could draw one big landscape picture, and then you could each take turns filling in different chunks with those different lines or patterns. If you've got a little one and you're like, this might be a little too much for maybe a 3-year-old, what if you just make a grid for your kiddo? You could just do a grid of squares or a grid of circles and just have them try to repeat lines within each of those larger shapes that you make. And lastly, please post your work. Not sure where you're watching this, but if you can put it in the comments, like a picture of what you've made, that would be awesome. I would love to see what you guys are making at home. If you can tag us, you can use the hashtag #PPLAtHome. That'll show us what you're doing at home. So I hope you enjoy this art project. We had a fun time making this one, and we'll be back next week with another art project for us. And I think that's it for today, right? I'm gonna say bye-bye.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye.
See you next time.